And welcome back to the NUTRIMEDICAL Report. And we have Karen from New Zealand talking about Mountain Red Velvet. What many doctors in these various academies are trying to do is literally transform and take out of I call them pre-embalming, polypharmacy, disease management medicine, and resurrecting in this now third millennium a true healthcare system that will reach not only tissue regeneration and zero senescence, but actually slow and stop the process of aging and reverse it and allow organ regeneration de novo in your body rather than doing cloning like the old cloning movies. In a sense, you're cloning yourself every day. You have a repair crew. In fact, you may not see that, and I'm not going to put little elf hats on these stem cells, but they might as well have. But when they do, they have to get off the freeway, and there has to be a flashing neon sign off the freeway, and that flashing sign has to be a scaffolding that says, get off the freeway at exit Cert 25BA because liver, cell, heart, brain needs to have a repair job. And the technician is sent on dispatch, just like they do now with their little message phones. And they arrive and get off the freeway. They see the flashing sign on the home, and they see a scaffolding up. And the scaffolding means you can start construction on this property. Without scaffolding, they say, sorry, wrong house. And they keep on moving. Now, that scaffolding is made up of three types of molecules that are present in Mountain Red Velvet. The first is what's called scalar transducers. These are infrared transducers of vibrational frequencies of molecules in solution, and they actually stick through the cell membranes and they act like a little radio transmitter to say, it's like, they talk about the Internet of Things. You've probably heard about that, right? Where everything in your home has like a IP address, and you can, turn on your stove and make your coffee and adjust the temperature in your home and make sure your doors are locked. That's coming, where people can have an Internet of Home. They can know their full home security. They can, eventually things will be where you not only will have not just a TV, but your entire wall will be a plasma screen, and eventually it'll all be even, I call 4D television, which is basically floating images in the air, just like the Star Trek movies, where Obi-Wan Kenobi is floating in the air. What you need to understand is with medicine, what we're doing now is we're bringing this all together in very advanced science. And it turns out some of the ancient things that were discovered, we're rediscovering, but we have science now to evaluate what's going on. Yeah. When you make a molecular formula, you have to make sure you don't lyophilize or destroy it. When you dry it out, you have to make sure it's not a high temperature, which is what Mountain Red Velvet does. You have to make sure there's no toxins like xylazine, anesthetic, and you want to make sure that it has the growth hormone factors so that when you take it, it returns your cells and tissues to a fetal state. And I have to explain this to people mathematically. The best way for me to teach, and this is found by the ancient Greeks, is to make your pupils ask better questions. It's not to give them all the answers, it's to make them ask better questions. The test-taking techniques right now provide you with a question and not a better question, not making you make a better question, provide you with a question, and then you are kind of prodded to provide the answer that the test maker wants. That's not the way to teach people. The way to teach people is to say, well, how come you die with the same genes that you were born? That's a pretty tough question, and I can guarantee you that the average doctor, scientist, knucklehead has no idea what they're talking about when they say, well, that's funny, I don't understand it. Well, because they never did. The fact is, the reason why you die is because you are not a fetus. Now, that's another question. If you're not a fetus, what's different about you from a fetus? It's extracellular matrix. If you have the ECM of a fetus, your body's cells get off the freeway, decide to go and say, hey, there's a scaffolding over there. Oh, there's damaged heart muscle, along with things like ergothioneine or micro D2, microdose, servo 100, and these other factors like collagen max, tendon or joint performance. Mountain Red Velvet is like a major, what I call tissue regenerator, and you can actually start taking a capsule. I do it right now under my tongue, although we're working with Mountain Red Velvet to make a version that'll actually be able to be taken orally and will go down to your terminal small bowel, so your bowel will convert it to what's called a micelle. And when you convert foods to micelle, you absorb your soluble vitamins and many other nutrients that will be contained and absorbed only by the jejunum, for example, for minerals like calcium, magnesium, but the fat-soluble vitamins and these very fragile biomolecules by the terminal ileum just before it gets to the cecum in your large bowel. Mountain Red Velvet is pretty cool. If you start taking a capsule under your tongue 4 times a day, your body will say, it'll high-five you, actually. believe it or not, a cellular high five. And you'll hear the crack of 150 billion cells giving you a high five, saying, high five, I can do this. In other words, they won't get a day older. You'll have a repair guys running around like little elves, making a better you. As I say, to build a better you. It should be a little tagline below the Dear Velvet. So that's what it is. And the research now... people is,
gee, I've got so much energy. I can get out and move.
I'll tell you why it does the energy.
Go out and play golf again. I'm not sore after that. And that's what we hear, real live cases of people saying,
exactly.
Wow.
Well, it doesn't just rebuild the tissues. It rebuilds your mitochondria. It rebuilds your cellular energetics. When you start taking Mountain Red Velvet, what happens is you have mitochondriogenesis, making new mitochondria, repairing the old ones, because remember now, old damaged mitochondria are like an old engine that's sputtering and giving off black smoke, and and it could even be a fire danger if there's no oil in the engine, or it'll just seize up. And what happens with mitochondria is they generate tons of free radicals. The primary generator of free radicals that causes cellular damage are mitochondria that are old or need to be, we call, destroyed. We call it mitochondriogenesis and mitochondrial destruction and apoptosis, where the body literally disassembles old mitochondria and takes them apart and then rebuilds and makes new mitochondria. And that process requires Mountain Red Velvet. If you don't have this, your body, what happens is, if you could look inside a cell, let's say use your Imagineering scope in your brain right now. Follow Dr. Deagle, who's like a very large 3-year-old, only now I'm 63, so just add 60 to that. And just think with your brain, I'm now inside your cardiomyocyte, and there's 2 million mitochondria in that one muscle cell in your heart. And now we turns out, of those 2 million, 800,000 are pretty crappy, and they're sputtering off tons of free radicals. Look at them as sparks. You're now walking inside the cell. Oh my gosh, there's so many sparks. The cell's on fire. And of course, it's damaging and cross-linking proteins and destroying different organelles, the Golgi apparatus, the packaging of endoplasmic reticulum, the neurotubules, etc. They're all getting screwed up by these free radicals. And the mitochondria are going, oh no. And of course, they're the queen of the cell. Your mitochondrial queen of the cell is little mitochondrial DNA, a ring chromosome, and it's 30-some times more sensitive to the free radicals than even the regular allele genes, because they have some regular protective mechanism in the nucleoplasm, where the nucleolus is inside the nucleoplasm, which is a small envelope inside the center of the cell. And if your mitochondria are 30 times more damaged, then you're going to get real serious trouble. You're going to what we call a mitochondrial apocalypse inside your cells. So when you start taking Mountain Red Velvet, you start generating, along with our other nutraceuticals, such as, for example, leptin metabolic, and things to regenerate new cells and tissues, silver 100, microdose, myco D2, which is going to be ergothioneine, which is the first activated receptor for cellular and tissue regeneration. And when you take Mountain Red Velvet, your body says, hey, I can do this. I can rebuild your joint. Hey, I can rebuild your brain. I can actually make you make neural networks so you can learn new concert piano pieces. You can learn a new musical piece. You can write a book at your advanced age of 78 or 80. You can make neural connections so you can remember those recipe cards and your grandchildren's names and all of their birthdays. And people say, that's not possible. You can't do that. I said, you know what? I was born DOA, dead on arrival, as a footling breech who died on the table, was given the last rites and put in a coffin. And I came back after 26 minutes. God said, I'm not done with that guy. I'm going to send him back. And then I died again at 8.5, and a surgeon cut an artery in my neck, and I bled to death and went down the tunnel of light and met God face to face. And he said, I'm not done with you, Deagle. If you go back, this is what you're going to do. And one of the things I'm going to do is, like my ancestor Moses, be a healer. I'm going to try to set it away to say we can have a healthcare system, and the first step in that healthcare system is to build a better you. Take your Mountain Red Velvet. As they say, if you're talking about resurrection this coming holiday, think of Mountain Red Velvet as your resurrection vitamin. How's that?
Is your whole health
And welcome back. And we're still talking about Mountain Red Velvet and regeneration. Again, I call this Resurrection Weekend. And a lot of people, they say they believe. You're a believer too, aren't you, Karen? Right?
Yes.
Now, I like to blow up paradigms, not just medical, but spiritual paradigms. I'll blow up a few of them here, and I'm going to bring in the spiritual side of what we're talking about when we give you Mountain Red Velvet and give you other things. Do you think that the patriarchs literally lived near 1,000 years, like Adam, right down to Methuselah, who's supposed to be the oldest living man?
Tell me it again.
Do you think the ancient patriarchs, like right from Adam to Methuselah,
I think they lived a lot longer than we do now.
Now, why do you think that is? And I'll give you some, not all the answers, but a lot of them. And also raise a lot of questions that, if you pursue those questions, we as scientists and people that study empirical issues, because again, remember, science is a way of mathematically describing something that you put together first in your imagination, based on asking questions based on a different perspective of reality. So what I tell the people is I don't change your mind, I change your perspective. You get to change your mind after you decide, based on scientific and evidence, and then on what I call spiritual ring of truth, whether or not it's true. So a lot of people think, well, you must be kidding. For example, when I talked recently to Dr. Ron Klatz, because he's a skeptical guy. He founded the Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. They have 26,500 doctors and 850,000 health professionals worldwide. And he's quite challenged by me. He says he came out and he was doing a show about a month and a half ago in February. And he actually was in studio with me the full 3 hours. And I said, all of the theories of you and all of the doctors on earth are all wrong about aging. All of them. Not just some of them, all of them. And he said, well, what's your theory, Deagle? I said, my theory is informatics. It's basically signal-to-noise ratio, which is an engineering principle. Now, when you use Mountain Red Velvet, you change the signal-to-noise ratio of the epigenetics controlling your gene switching on and off. Kind of interesting, hey? So in other words, if you don't have it, you don't have a signal-to-noise filter, and the noise basically doesn't allow you to turn on and off genes correctly. I ask people a question, for example, what's cancer? Cancer is not a mutated cell caused by a gene mutation from radiation or chemicals. Cancer is a stress cell from any kind of stress, emotional stress, biochemical stress, because ultimately it's free radicals, that in stress responds by adapting to turn on and off genes. It's not a weak cell, it's a strong cell. It's the opposite of what people think. What's aging? Aging is the accumulation of old senescent cells, damaged mitochondria that the body doesn't get rid of. Let's put it this way. It's like if you were a corporation and you had a business, and it turned out you never fired employees, and the employees never died, but they just got older and older, like that ancient Greek curse on that. I'm trying to remember the name. I think it was, they were supposed to never die, but they just kept getting older and more decrepit.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens inside your body. If you've got older senescent mitochondria or cells, you got to fire them. It's time for them to retire and go home and sit in a rocking chair on their front doorstep. Now, I don't believe personally in retirement, because I think you can keep yourself in a what I call tuned up state. So at 150 or 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 years, you go poof, and everybody, all your relatives, take a vacuum, suck up your dust, and put it on an urn on the mantle. That should be your funeral. In other words, retirement is the back of the shovel and the plot of ground over which you lay. I don't believe in retirement. I think the average male lives 7 months after retirement before we pronounce them dead, give them formaldehyde, and say, now rot in the ground, buddy. Now, no. How does that tie in with the spiritual side? Well, yeah, I'll tell you why it ties with the spiritual side. They did an actuarial study, and they found out even in the best, most peaceful conditions on Earth, if you made people live basically no aging, no detectable aging, the average person would live 470 years. That's in a good world. Now, our world is more dangerous than that. So if you actually, it's my estimate that the average person would live about 100 to maybe maximum 120 years. But they'd look really good when they died. They died of violence from war, starvation, gunshot wounds, pestilence, but they wouldn't die of aging. Now, aging is the cause of 90% plus of deaths. The other 10% are stupid things like driving your car too fast, taking illegal drugs, drinking like a fish, diving off of high towers and buildings with one of those bat suits on thinking you're going to fly. That's how you die. But the other 90%, which is most of death, is actually caused by some form or other of aging. Aging shows up as cancer, inflammation of your blood vessel walls, regenerate organs, the accumulation of senescent cells that causes things like polycystic kidney disease, so you get these cystic lesions, or just organ senescence. Your muscles, you get myopathies where the muscle fibrils get destroyed, or you assisted along with stupid drugs by your knucklehead doctors that give you a myopathy, such as the HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors, or some of the newer ones like PPAR gamma 1 inhibitors that'll really cause damage to your cells and tissues and mitochondria. Now, and what they do, of course, a lot of the drugs like even Levaquin and moxifloxacin, they interfere with what's called DNA gyrase 4. And what that does is it actually destroys your mitochondria, because DNA gyrase 4 is one of the protective enzymes that protects your mitochondria from being fried. So if you block DNA gyrase 4, bye-bye. Nice knowing you, queen of the cells. See you later, mitochondria. Okay? Now, if doctors disagree with me, I will blast them with my minigun of medical research from the National Library of Medicine. So don't even think about challenging me, because I'm going to put you down on the mat and put you in a locked chokehold in about 30 seconds, intellectually. This is mixed mental martial arts. Now, why do I say that's important on the spiritual side?
Back at the absolute basics of this, because look at our boys. They grow this every year. This is regenerative bone that they can grow year on year for
every year.
So
right, and the reason why they do that is a biology.
And all we're doing is taking what they grow, all 396 different ingredients, and that's how you can heal, because that is absolutely new bone every year.
And it's not just bone; it's all the other extracellular matrix that allows the extracellular to see those three classes: the translation of scalar infrared signals to the cells and the DNA and the epigenetics, the building blocks of cells and tissues, and the modulators of enzymes. Those three classes of molecules.
Yeah, so, and it's all new every year.
And this ties in, by the way, with the spiritual side. What is the greatest deficiency in any advanced culture? What is the I'm talking about the single thing that is causing a culture to be corrosive and corrupt? It's a lack of wisdom. And where is wisdom held? Wisdom is held in the elderly that are healthy. If you want to be a totalitarian world government, you have to say anybody over 45, you need to die tomorrow, because you don't want anybody old enough to remember and have a clear mind and actually be functional. And if you have somebody that's 100 years of age, like two people in the parliament in Georgia, it's a real problem. Having wise old people that have all their clues is really hard to have a totalitarian state, police state, or I call it feudal 21st century satanic matrix. And if you want a human lifespan to extend, you need to extend people's spirituality too, which is why spiritual resurrection is necessary for life extension. And Chris, we're all set. Chris Jackson from VibraSlim. And now, the VibraSlim, people have to understand what VibraSlim does to your body. Vibrational forces have an interesting effect on cells and tissues. They change, for example, your levels of brain hormones that actually regulate your set point, so it lowers the set point to a lower body weight, so your body will defend it. It increases proprioception by stimulating the Golgi tendon apparatus in the tendons and increasing the what's called afferent proprioceptive input from your feet, ankles, and nerves, and all your joints. So it actually reprograms you to protect the vector forces around your joints to cause less chance of injury. It improves the balance, so you have 80% chance of less falls by 3 10-minute sessions in an 80-year-old person in just over 1 month. It changes mitochondrial function by boosting mitochondriogenesis and a deiodination of thyroid to create a activated form of T3 in the tissues, so it raises your core metabolic rate. It releases dynorphin and beta endorphin to control pain, and it stimulates your brown fat to increase the brown fat metabolism, to mobilize fat out of the fat stores and actually burn it off. That's a lot. And if you look at the volumetric fat loss compared, and this is European studies, it's something like 2.5 times more fat loss for as little as 10 minutes of exercise versus an hour of aerobic exercise a day. And even if you stopped it 3 to 6 months later, the body will still defend a lower weight. I tell people, no matter what exercise you do, you can be a power lifter, runner, ski jumper, tennis player, you need to be doing vibrational exercise. And a lot of the rock stars and movie people, because they have highly compressed schedules, they'll have even a vibrational platform on the movie set or the set where they're doing, if they're going around traveling to different major shows, people like Madonna and some other major stars, they basically carry their vibrational platform machine with them. The neat thing about the Vibra Slim is that you can't beat $99 with shipping included in the United States, and shipping international is inexpensive. It's modular, and you have a 3-year warranty, so if anything breaks down, they just send you the modular replacement, which you can snap together without a technician and without sending the whole machine. So, Chris, tell us about the advantages to this machine, which is now increase the strength of the various components of it. So it's now useful for continuous use. So if you're in a clinic, even chiropractic, osteopathic, medical or rehab clinic, professional sports center, fitness center, whatever, you can use this show down. It's literally, indestructible, I guess would be. They're pretty close to it anyways. Nothing's indestructible, but it's as close as you can get at a price because, if you compare this machine to the bigger ones like PowerPoint, it's 1/3 to 1/2 the cost of a larger high-powered machine like a power plate, and with more features than these other machines. So tell us the advantages to the VibraSlim.
Yeah, well, over the last 5 years, it's been interesting because a lot of the doctors and chiropractors, 5 years ago, they wouldn't support it. They didn't understand it. They thought it was a joke. But now, now there's over 2,300 research reports on vibration exercise, and some of our biggest customers now are therapy clinics and chiropractors. The chiropractors learned the secret is that, anyone who has bad back problems, the VibraSlim is amazing, and it works a lot better than a chiropractor. So the chiropractors do their thing, and then they put their patients on the VibraSlim after helps realign the spine and strengthen muscles in your back that you are hard to work out, which causes a lot of back problems. You get weak muscles. And the other group that really loves the VibraSlim is women, for getting their legs in shape, toning, reducing cellulite, and reducing weight. Belly fat reduction is a huge thing with the VibraSlim. It's one of the best ways to trim down and tone up your legs and body. And you can do it in 15 minutes a day. You can sit on a treadmill for an hour every day, but you still won't get the same results you do in a VibraSlim because of the effect, like you say, it has on the body.
Right. Yeah, it's quite amazing. Do you know of any other major things that the VibraSlim does that you found our researchers pointed to? Because the more I research it, the more I find out.
Oh yeah, everything from bone density increasing, which bone density is hard to fix, and people think that running and stuff actually will help you with bone density. It actually doesn't, because it's not what increases bone density. The vibration does. It's the micro impacts on your bones actually builds your bones up, makes them stronger. Especially as we get older, we become calcium deficient and bones get brittle. The VibraSlim's literally one of the best ways you can to strengthen your bones and fight osteoporosis.
Yeah. Do you know why it does that? It does it for two things. Firstly, it stimulates the laying down of new type 29 collagen for the rebar inside your bones, for the lamellae of your spinal bones and your long bones with the metaphysis and diaphysis. But it also stimulates the compression of the crystal structure of your bones that creates a piezoelectric charge by compression from the vibrational forces or shear force, and that increases the differential presence of electrons that stimulate the osteoblasts to start making new bone. So this setting was called signal transduction to increase collagen production, the rebar, and bone crystallization on that. So pulse light therapy, lumen photon, pulse magnetic field like the X-Vitalizer. But the primary treatment for osteoporosis is to take our bone generator, Micelle D3, Myco D2, Fovarium K2, and Collagen Max, Mountain Red Velvet, and then on top of that to take, tendon bender joint performance. It doesn't matter, and to be honest with you, you don't even need to be able to exercise on it. You can take Grandpa who can't walk and stand up and hold them on there, or even if you want to have set up a chair where you can sit on there, and it'll increase some vibrational effect. But ideally, you want it transmitted through his feet, right through his axial spine and his big bones, like his hip, right through the surgical neck of his hips to his lumbar vertebrae, and that compressional force will actually stimulate bone regeneration. Sitting around all day long is as bad as drinking too much, or smoking cigarettes to cause bone inflammation that causes demineralization and loss of collagen too. And you can prove it. You can measure deoxypyridinium and pyridinoline subunits in the urine to see that those are in the Genova Metametrics lab through directlabs.com. It'll actually show you these protein subunits of collagen are no longer present from the bone. You can measure his levels of 24-hour output of calcium and magnesium to see if he's demineralizing, and you can do a bone densitometry, do a DEXA bone scan, and you can prove that you're reversing it. So, the presence of these markers shows that vibration for osteoporosis, falls, and for loss of tensile strength of your connective tissues, ligaments, and joints. I mean, it's to me, every home should have one of these. Every fitness center, every senior center, every office where people are sitting down in cubicles, and when they go to the bathroom, they can even get out. So during the day, they can accumulate 10 minutes of vibrational treatment. They're going to be completely different. They're going to reverse the very serious effect of sitting down in front of a computer in a crunched, flexed position all day long. This should be, every office has one of these, basically, should have one. Every bus station, every airport should have it. Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you what, as a marketing thing, you should have one right beside the water cooler, right beside the washroom. So you go to the washroom, you wash your hands, you go have a drink of water, filtered water, hopefully. You get on the VibraSlim and stretch and make it a little bit of an exhibitionist there in front of everybody and say the train station or the airport. Stretch with some TheraBands and get the kinks out and move on with your day. Specials, amazing specials, not just this weekend, but holding right through, $1,299 and free shipping in the U.S. VibraSlim, the best vibrational machine.
Is your whole health constantly challenged? Would you like to age less? Then consider taking Ageless Chocolate and Life Support.
And from Southern California, our top realtor, and I can tell you, you need to know that Dave Mitchell is a remarkable realtor. He's a Christian, but he's also a genius at real estate. There are different levels, whether it's medicine, dentistry, or being able to buy and sell properties to fit exactly what your needs are, your budget, and actually think in a creative way to get you a property, even when you think, well, I can't buy a property. Well, there's all kinds of financing ways to get a property, even if you don't build a home on it right away, or to get a prepper property for a large number of families, as people should start thinking about in the next number of years that, need to be prepped for that final stage where you have, we call, safe cities or safe communities away from disaster zones where civilization collapses. Dave, tell us about some of the properties you emailed me and some of the options for people where they can't, let's say, worry about financing, how they're going to finance to buy a home. Maybe they had previous credit problems, or the person that owns the property will finance in a sense for them. There's lots of options, and you have some big properties that you've discovered that are fit for large numbers of families that could, as a group, buy it. So you have, let's say, a $250,000 property that could have 50 or 60 families on with wells. They could start thinking about the idea of having a prepper community there now. You mentioned one that you actually had in an email to me that was no more than 5 miles from a freeway, but it's 20 miles from the nearest, quote, population center. So it would be far enough away to actually allow people to protect themselves if things got nuts. And I tell people, Southern California is, although people find it, they say, well, you're near the west coast, so there's Fukushima. No. That radiation is heading north toward Washington State and British Columbia. We have sea life affected by the sea life and the water flow. So as long as you don't eat seafood and you're growing food down here, our radiation levels are really background. That's the fact. And if you want to prep, if you've got a well and you're all set, these continuous reasonable climate, if you have wells and good source of water, you're set. I mean, Southern California is one of the best places in the world, actually, to be a prepper, isn't it?
Yep.
certainly have an ideal climate.
So, Dave, tell us about those properties and all the things you can do for people.
Okay. Well, I just met with a guy yesterday that he's a lender, and he took back this property. It's in an area called Pine Valley, but it has more the feel of Campo, and it's east of San Diego. The property's over 100 acres. It has a manufactured home on it. It has a really good well on it. But it's up on top of a hill, but the hill kind of flattens out, so it's very defensible property, and you can see all around you. And then there's probably a good 20 acres that's flat right there of the 100 and some acres, and then there's other parts of it that would be usable for growing or whatever. Also, it's near one of the best springs in the county. There's unfortunately, because of the drought, it's not running right now because I stopped and looked at it. But this cancer patient told me it had really good water. And in fact, if you've heard of Hulda Clark, she was the one that told him about it. She wrote that book.
Oh, that's interesting. Hulda Clark that developed the Clark Zapper, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, that's really cool. Okay, what can you do for people? You mentioned a number of things you can do. Like you have these big properties you've already found that are actually there available.
Yeah. Now somebody could buy them themselves if they wanted a big property and for their friends or relatives or whatever. Or you could even form some kind of partnership and have somebody come in, cash it out, put some more improvements in it. You could set up camping spots. But really, I was thinking for as low as, maybe $5,000, somebody could get an interest in a prepper type property that they could go out and camp occasionally. Exactly. And then when things really do get rough, they could actually go out there and live full time.
Yeah.
But it would
whether you have a fifth wheel or you get a turtle. Yeah, whether you have a fifth wheel, a turtle tough shelter, or you put some buildings on the property, the primary thing you want for the property is defensible, it's large enough, and it's got water source. And some of these properties you mentioned on your email, and I could pick it up and post it for you as well, they have wind, so you can have wind power. You always have solar here in Southern California. It's insane how much solar. And the new solar is, by the way, that's coming, a research out of Sweden, is what's called direct algae, this new modified form of algae they have in Sweden that they've researched. That actually directly generates hydrogen. So you have hydrogen compressor and a adsorbing fuel cell tank, and then a fuel cell that actually generates electricity directly. You can use the hydrogen also for fuel to heat and cook, and also even to charge up cars with hydrogen engines. So, when people say alternative energy, because they get comedians on like this comedian up from Santa Barbara, I'm not going to mention his name, on O'Reilly, that try to say, alternative energy is garbage. It's because the powers that be want to suppress better quality solar panels, direct solar conversion that generates hot water or light, which they've researched in Israel for like 15 years. It's already available. They've done research here at solar centers here in California. But you want to have land that has water, and you want to be able to grow food on it, and you want to defend it. And in fact, in that area, you could even have wild turkeys, you can have cattle, you can do almost anything in these different big properties. And the climate is so benign, that's why 90% of the food supply of the rest of the country comes from California. So we know North American Water and Power Project could bring water in, and primary water, and then desalination, which is the largest plant in the world, is going to open up in the next few months here in Carlsbad, California, just 10 miles away. And people should realize that the globalists and the powers that be have created that shouldn't exist, but realize that at some point people better be prepared at some future date to, number one, get out of the big cities now. And I tell people, if you can contact Dave, he'll help you get out of the big cities. And if you're in another part of the country, he'll help you with getting your property sold through an affiliate realtor and getting your property here. And then start thinking about the idea down the road if things really get insane, because most of the what we call mini disasters are going to be power goes out for a few days to a few weeks, or we have some major war, and or there's a major collapse in the economy, or there's a biological weapon released. And you need to be prepared for that. People say, well, those things are unlikely to happen. No, they're not. They're actually extremely likely to happen. In the next 10 to 20 years, the chances of a major disaster happening that literally causes a cardiac arrest of society is a guarantee. It's not a maybe thing. It's you put your money down, you're gonna win your bet. So Dave, what can you do for people that have a property and want to sell it in another part of the country and buy here, or they're in California and they want to rebuy, or they want to move to a rural property that they can then start to developing?
Well, one thing great about this property, because it's lender-owned, he will exchange for another property, and he could even pay cash difference. So in other words, say somebody had a $500,000 house that they own somewhere else in California or another state or whatever, and he'll even take them out of state. He would consider trading, this property for their home or whatever other property they could have, maybe a commercial property or units or something. Because he's
pretty amazing.
Loan on this, and he has no plan on keeping it.
Yeah, see, that's really these opportunities are possible, and what people should realize is that right now your dollar is worth a lot. It's my guess, based on a lot of special guests that we've had on, like Gerald Salente, I get his newsletter all the time, Joel Scows and other top experts, and we'll be bringing on a top gold expert, by the way, from Midas Resources here regularly again soon, too. Ted's too busy now to come on personally, but he has a senior gold analyst that'll be coming on the program. There's almost certainly going to be a 20% drop in the value of the U.S. dollar this year. So it's the time now, when your value of your money is in your bank in any kind of printed currency, to convert it to something that's more concrete, like property. And I tell people 1/3 of your value should be in silver and gold, 1/3 in prepper supplies, including NutriMeds, and 1/3 in property and other things that, like, artwork or antiques or things that are barterable, that you could barter in a collapsed economy. One of the most valuable things is to get property where you could live, or groups of people could live in the future. So if you want to get a hold of Dave, your number is 619-990-6050. 619-990-6050. The direct link on their website is on the banner ads page of NutriMedical.com. Thank you, Dave. You do an amazing job, and we'll go over a lot more prepper ideas as we give you next week. Just stay right there. We'll get you rebooked. And we're celebrating today the birth yesterday of our little baby granddaughter, Matilda, and we'll be going up next weekend. And coming up, we have our number 3, believe it or not, time flies, Ann Morrison, and we hope to get Professor James McCanney. We can tell he's on air because we can usually hear McCanney's cock crowing in the background